Welcome in, welcome in. Talkin Badgers is back, and I've got a lot to say after what we witnessed at Camp Randall this weekend. If you're a Wisconsin Badgers fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This one was a little too close for comfort, but that's why we're here, right? To break it all down, the good, bad, and everything in between. Before we dive into it, you know the drill. Share the show with someone who needs a little Badgers therapy after that game. And we're trying to build something here, and it's because of you guys that we keep doing this. Let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about Wisconsin's 28-14 win over Western Michigan. I don't have to tell you that this one wasn't as smooth as we'd hoped. There were moments where it felt like this game could have slipped through our fingers, if not for a lucky bounce on a punt from Atticus Bertrams. We'll talk about that in a second. We're going to try to kind of kick things off with a glass half full approach. There are some good things to take away from this game. Offensively, we saw a couple flashes. Things were clicking. The running game had a little bit of rhythm. Then after that, try to find some of the good on defense. Then after we have, extracted any of the good that may have came from that, we're going to take a glass half empty part of the show and just kind of lay it all out there. There were a lot of things to be concerned about. There's inconsistencies on offense, troubles in the trenches. And we're going to have to kind of break down what the cracks are, what needs to change before we get into the meat of the schedule. And then finally, I'm going to have a hot take I need to get off my chest. Whether or not it ruffles some feathers, we'll see. But that's what we do here. So stick around for that. It's coming up later in the show. All right, fellas.
Geography.
Yeah, and then you already know Coop's going to hit us with some more geography lessons this week. So we're going to start here. Ryan, I know that you're somebody who kind of wears his fandom on his sleeve in a way that I very much respect. Coming out of week one, what did this close call tell you about where Wisconsin stands as we head into week 2 of the season?
Well, first, what I learned is I probably shouldn't have a social media account because I go through every range of emotions before kickoff, during kickoff, after the game. I think many of us ran the whole gamut of emotions throughout the game. Like, oh, hey, started on that first drive. Hey, we look good. And then, you fast forward a little bit like, oh, my gosh, like we're not getting any push to are we going to lose this game at home to a neighbor next to me at the game that literally said if they lose this game, they should fire Fickell at midfield, which was definitely hilarious. Didn't necessarily disagree with for about 4 seconds there while my brain was soaking it in. I think this close call at this early in the season is terrifying. I think it's terrifying for multiple reasons too. Like year 2 in a system, in an offensive system, is when you really start to go. Now, we can say that Western Michigan has a better offensive line than we thought, and their running back was good. That's all fine. Iowa scored 40 points. They clearly know how to score the football. Why can't we score the football? Now, is the opponents the same? Of course not. Wisconsin beat Illinois State 38-0 also when we played them recently. What was it, 2 years ago when PC was still here? Like to open the season. So equal opportunity. We have it just, I don't know. My brain is melting because I don't know where to go from here. Like I like the idea that you can grow and you can develop and you can do all that stuff, but I don't know if I've ever been disappointed in a win more than I was in this one. Just because when you're down 14-13 at home in the fourth quarter in year 2 of a system against, mind you, Western Michigan had a new offensive coordinator. I believe that quarterback only had a handful of starts.
And their best offensive player was out.
And it just felt like we were getting out-coached. And it's like, I never thought I would say that with a Coach Fickell, Mike Tressel, and Phil Longo assembled team there. But it's just like scheme and integrity and like all these, or not like game integrity, but like scheme integrity and like gap responsibility and these things. It's just like, why are we getting out everything by a MAC team? That's so where we stand is just like where don't we stand? Like I'm terrified for every game left on the schedule, not because they're going to go 1-11. Of course they're not, but I think we are far from that 11-1 ceiling that some of us had said.
Yeah, I never saw that 11-1 ceiling coming personally.
No.
But
some of us do. We wear our emotions on our sleeves, Dylan.
And I love that and I respect that. But I think to your point, like obviously we weren't going to come out of week 1 all of a sudden just forgiving all that happened a year ago and all the frustrations that came with it. But we certainly didn't exit week 1, I think, with any more answers about who this team is, what their identity is, than we did, the last time we watched them play football.
Yeah, I think I personally I'm more on my Aaron Rodgers relax type mood. Don't get me wrong. When that game started after the second drive, I said I've changed my win total to 4 games this year. But as I sat back and watched that game, I just think I know we hate making excuses and stuff, but I think if they get a score a touchdown instead of that Bakos miss, it's a completely different game. And they had 16 play drives. They're moving the ball. They weren't getting chunk plays. Yeah, that sucked. But I don't think I learned anything more or less in this game. It doesn't. It's not the end of the world for me. And we still won the game. We won a game that was close. I feel like that shows something for the Badgers. You could go and beat the shit out of a team who shouldn't even be playing on the same field as you. At least the Badgers were tested a little bit. They overcame some adversity. If you want to look for positives, they were down in the third quarter and they battled, and then they kind of dominated the fourth quarter. We just wish they would have done that for 4 quarters.
And isn't that kind of part of the problem, is that we never saw 4 consecutive quarters of it a year ago?
That's fair.
Jay, you're saying the same thing we all said after the Buffalo game last year.
Bingo.
And I feel like I don't think I sent it. Maybe I did. I don't know. I had a couple highlights in me. But I felt like after about a quarter and a half, it's I'm watching the same exact team I watched last year. I felt like nothing was different. I don't know, maybe it's just me and just being ignorant, but that's how I felt. And maybe I was just angry because we weren't blowing the shit out of Western Michigan. Pause. But I think
we had this conversation.
Everyone I've seen on Twitter who's trying to be positive, it's the same shit we said last year. And look what happened. This is a 5-7 ball club. If we hit 8 wins, I would be ecstatic, dude.
This is the same conversation, though, that we've had about basketball. It's what are our expectations, though? You just said, this is a 5-7 win team. So my expectations that if they win 7 games, great. That's what I expect them to do. If they win more than that, that'd be awesome. If they win 4 games, it's gonna suck. Yeah, I'm gonna be annoyed by that.
But it's so different. Because in basketball, it's just make the tournament. College football now, it's make the tournament.
Well, none of us think that they are going to make the tournament this year.
Yeah, not this year. I gotta push back on that at least a little. I'm with Jay in the sense that for me, my expectation is 7 wins. And anything beyond that is house money, and to me is improvement. I would love to see that feel better, but it's the this is one of those 7 wins that you expect to win, and it was a little too close for comfort in a game where you're not going to have a lot of them on the slate that I think you're probably penciled in favorite.
I think what irritates me the most, because I'm kind of contradicting what I've said when we did talk basketball, but when they announced it was going to be a 12-team playoff, and how many Wisconsin people I saw post the stat where Wisconsin would have made X number of playoffs, watch us out, here we fucking come, and then
pretty sure I retweeted that a lot.
Yeah. And then we shit the bed. I mean, we win, but we shit the bed against Western Michigan, and they're all right, stay calm. It's no, this isn't the same person who would be thinking that, look, we would have made the playoffs in, 90 or 85 to 90% of the seasons if they had like this since the BCS. And I don't know. I think I'm just irritated maybe with the fan base more than anything.
Well, that when Jay even says, when we talk about expectations, I know in basketball that was always a hot button issue. That was one that I just kept being a prick about, over and over and over again, because I felt like none of us were, even on our show, don't have a consensus. But I think it's a pretty good consensus. Now, obviously, it's not every year, but every single time Coach Fickell's asked, there's only been one answer. It's never been to grow. It's never been to develop. It's to play for championships. So if someone's going to tell you over and over, if Greg Gard came here and said every year our expectation is to make a tournament, then you could say, hey, you didn't make the tournament. But they never talk about that. It's so absolute. Coach Fickell said it every single turn. Our goal is to play. Our expectations are play for championships and to get better as the season goes on. I think last year we could argue that did they get better as the season went on? Maybe. I mean, they scored 3 points against Northwestern until a garbage touchdown, and they did a Braylon Allen fourth quarter overtime fourth down hurrah to beat Nebraska. But it's like, are we playing our best ball at the end? And if we're not playing for championships, are we lower than our expectations? Because I agree with Jay. If 5 to 7 wins was our expectation, then I'm like, boom, we're right on target. But it's like, you can't advertise and say these grandiose things, and then when you're held to them, say, well, it's a rebuilding year, or we don't have all of our players, or we're still working on the scheme. Well, then don't say you're playing for championships. It's to build a program to compete for championships later, but don't say that our goal every year is to play for championships if realistically it's 5 to 7 wins.
Let me ask you this, Coop. Is there anything that next week this team could show you against South Dakota that would make you feel better going into Bama? Not necessarily about their odds of winning it, but is there anything that they could show you against South Dakota that would erase week 1 from your mind?
It's an FCS team, dude. Bielema would beat this team by 60 to prove a point.
Well, remember 2 weeks before Paul Chryst got fired, he beat New Mexico State 66-7. So
yeah, for a reason.
Yeah. So I think right there we'll kind of hit pause on this conversation and get into a little positivity, because we're going to unload with some negative, thoughts here in a little bit, and I feel like if we cut those wounds open, it'll all pour out right now. So let's hit pause on that, and let's talk about a couple of positive things that we did see. So Coop, I want to throw this over to you. So what is the biggest positive that you saw in offense in this game, and how can they build on that moving forward?
The biggest positive is we scored enough points to win. At the end, I can bitch about all I want, but at the end of the day, we won. I guess that's all that matters. How we did it wasn't great, but still doesn't show on the end of the season record. One thing that was really positive, I believe we had 2 16-play drives that ate up a ton of clock.
And 2 14s.
Yeah. So it was nice to see the boys move the ball kind of methodically down the field. 10 for 16 on third down, 62%, not too shabby. 35 minutes of possession compared to 24 for Western Michigan. And we had the one turnover, but you look at stats like that and it's like we should have won this game by 28 points, 30 points. But couldn't finish on some long drives. I feel like last week I was excited about Van Dyke stretching the field. We're going to see so many shot plays a game. I feel like I saw the same exact offense as last year, where in the first quarter I didn't know if we were going to throw it to anyone other than a running back. That crossed my mind.
Positivity didn't last real long.
No, it didn't. It really didn't.
Love the swing passes, huh?
Like I saw some good things, but it was just a lot more of the same. I just think Tyler Van Dyke, and not that he played great, but he's better than Tanner Mordecai in this system, and it showed enough. And our running game, not that I think we averaged like 4-point-something yards a carry. It's not through the roof, but it was consistent enough to be encouraged later in the season. A lot of times your running game can take a little bit to get adjusted to, especially with a guy who's coming off an injury, a brand new running back, and then a bit of a different offensive line. But I think my biggest positive, or like glass half full thing, is how well we were on third down and the time of possession. And they couldn't finish some long drives. And if they do, I think we're having a completely different conversation, but that's not what happened.
I think you're spot on with the third down, conversions that we saw, the fourth down conversion. Those are things that this team struggled with a year ago. You love to see that, especially against, an inferior opponent on paper. Like you should be able to convert on those. They ran for over 190 yards. I think for me, that's probably one of my, bigger takeaways. Ches and Taui both, it was nothing to write home about, but they ran hard.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be this team's identity. Ultimately, is going to be the rushing attack. And you know what? Cade Giacomelli is someone who I kind of thought was going to be the forgotten man in this rotation, at least for this week. He stepped in and gave them a little change of pace. And 4 carries, 35 yards. I thought I think the running game, especially, obviously look at a box score, Tyler Van Dyke running for 21 yards is nothing to write home about, but I thought he looked the part of a capable runner. I thought he did a nice job pulling him on some of the reads. If trying to keep it positive, I think that this team's identity might be the way it runs the football. And I thought that they commanded the offense in some of those respects.
One thing too, I had jotted down, and they'd mentioned this on the broadcast, and I thought it was an awesome point because I was shocked right away in the first quarter when we came out in that kind of inverted wishbone with all three of the running backs. And I think the play only went for a couple yards that time. But I was like, man, I want to see this like 5 to 7 times a game. What they could do, and you mix in some of the younger maybe running backs who are more kind of receiving backs in that formation. So I like the sprinkles in there from Longo. Didn't love everything he did, but I really like that. And I think with the tight ends, if they play halfway decent too in that formation, like it could be dangerous. So I just had that jotted down. I really liked when all three of them were on the field at the same time, and couldn't agree with you more. Dylan Yakimelli, he earned some more reps. He looked great.
Thought so too. I was pleasantly surprised.
I really liked our 2-minute offense. Like we kind of seem to have we used it I think right after we went down 14-13 as well. Like there's a little bit of like more sense of urgency, and it seemed like a lot of the drives where, they'd get to the line of scrimmage and they'd kind of, call the play, make adjustments, and wouldn't necessarily go fast. They weren't huddling, obviously, but that 2-minute, they were kind of going fast, and it seemed like they were moving the ball pretty easily and kind of expanding. I mean, we didn't have, like you said, not a ton of big plays, but it seemed like they were able to stretch the field a little bit more when they were going fast, and it kept the defense on their heels.
Also, if you don't call it the 2-minute warning, you're a square.
That's crazy, man. The 2-minute timeout, that's wild.
Give me a break, dude.
The fact that I think every game I watched, the announcer made a point to be like, we're not supposed to call it the 2-minute warning. It's like, well, you're doing it. Like,
yeah.
Wow, I didn't even know that. I didn't even notice.
Yeah.
They're just trying to rewrite history. It's absolutely bogus.
It's weird.
Well, yeah, I think if I was going to think about positive things, I really like some of the youth. Tretch, we need him on the field a lot.
Yes.
Xavier Lucas.
Maybe
I'm sure Forkering did nice. I love the stat that I saw circulating Twitter when it said Rico Hallman and then the thrown at 0 times, like welcome to Hallman Island. I love that. But the biggest, Lucas is a beast. 7 snaps, already got a pick, and knew to get 2 feet down, so he's already ready for Sundays. I like that. But one of the things that maybe go unnoticed a little bit outside of, the young guys and, performance. I like the big nut cutting time where Coach Fickell went for it on his own 35, 40-yard line. Because there was times but I love it though, because there was times last year when either he just didn't believe in the boys or whatever. I mean, I know Bakos was out, but you still have 3 kickers on the roster. And they punted from Indiana's 38-yard line and got a net punt of 11 yards or whatever it was after a touchback, 18 yards or whatever they punted from. So to go for it on your own side and just said, no, we're going to go ahead and get that. I can find positivity in that because it's are we going to beat Bama? Probably unlikely. I might be able to talk myself into that in the next 9 days. But even if you're losing, to have the stones to do that, I want that kind of aggressiveness, and kind of gets back to Jay's point when they're they kind of went hurry up and they had a sense of urgency. Can we do that for 60 minutes? I'd like to play that kind of football because it's not air raid if you're just throwing it horizontally. I've seen people saying before, Longo talks about you want to stretch them horizontally so then you can take deep shots. It's there's only 2 passes over 15 yards, 3 passes. Let's play with a little more urgency for 60 minutes, and then your boy will probably buy all the way back in.
Longest completion was 17 yards.
But what was the air yards? 4?
I don't know. I didn't look that up. I just looked up the longest completion to make
myself. I'm saying, I didn't see a lot of balls, and from my seats, I saw one that went 8 yards over Bryson Green's head into the 3rd row.
Well,
I didn't see much more than that.
I know we got to move on here, but in my notes, one thing I had, because there's a couple down the field, especially in the red area. Van Dyke and Will Paulinger's not on the same page.
No,
not yet.
I mean, Pauling, I think you can argue the first one either way. Pauling made the guy fall down, though, on that little kind of post route, whatever you want to call it. And then the second one, I think Pauling was right, and Van Dyke just completely, just different page, overthrew him. But yeah, overthrew a couple other guys like Bryson Green. It's a big boy to be overthrown a couple times a game. So that was a little concerning.
So let's put a bow on the positivity there on offense. I feel like we hit on the points that were worth hitting on in that one. You know, I appreciated the minimal penalties. I think maybe that's a credit to Coach Blazic after what we saw last year. Obviously, they did have a key penalty there in the red zone, but we'll get to all that. I want to hit on one last little bit of positivity here, Coop. Defensively, we saw some key stops in this game. Do you think that this defense has the potential to be the backbone of this team in 2024?
Sure. I mean, this team might not be
worth 1,000 words.
Like, this team might be not great, and the defense could be the best part. I think this is just what we're going to get with Tressel. A lot of bend don't break. I feel like that's just part of that defense, and you're looking to capitalize on big plays, turnovers, things like that. The D line was very concerning, as we all knew it would be. I feel like if we played a more competent team, like if we played Boston College, they're probably running for 300 yards on us too, or whatever they ran for against Florida State. So I don't think it would have been pretty. And then the pass rush was.
These are positive things, Coop.
I know. This is as positive as I'm trying to be, Dylan. Like, what do you want? What do you want from me? Like, Hunter Waller looked good. Rico Hallman was awesome. Xavier Lucas should play more. Other than that, what am I excited about? I'm sorry to be that kind of guy and not go with the program, but like that's how I feel.
I think that if you're going to have one big positive takeaway from the defense, and obviously this game didn't necessarily give them all the opportunities to illustrate, is that our cornerback depth, I think, is legitimate. I think this is one of the better quarterback rooms that we have had at Wisconsin, at the very least, in quite some time. I mean, Isaiah Forkreen was terrific. Ricardo Holman, they didn't even think to target him. And obviously, Xavier Lucas got a lot of headlines with his 7 snaps and his interception. That's great. But you've got someone who, like Max Lofi, who came out of nowhere, played a lot of snaps on Saturday, did well, only gave up 1 catch for 4 yards, out of the slot. I think that was encouraging. RJ Delancey is another guy. I think that this cornerback room is legit, and I think that we have some strong options. I think that's probably my big positive on defense coming out of Saturday or Friday night.
I got one more positive for you.
Fire away.
I'm positive that I'm going to go insane if they have that many DBs on the field and not enough defensive linemen when they go in 12 personnel with 2 tight ends and a running back. Because I'm not entirely sure why Hunter Wohler, dog, absolute DAWG, all caps. He should not be leading our team in tackles again. If he's leading our team in tackles, things are going awry again.
I think we're all itching to get to segment 3. So let me throw it over here real quick.
He's a dog.
I was being so positive, dude.
No, I know all this, but I think that we've gotten all the juice that we can squeeze out of this one. And so we're going to start to pivot. So we're going to pause here. This one's important. So Caden's Wish is granting life-changing wishes for children battling critical illness. And you can be a part of making that difference. Head on over to cadenswish.org. Check them out, and let's see if our little community can, lend a small helping hand to make some dreams come true. All right. We've said the good, but we know damn well there's a lot more bad coming out of that game against Western Michigan, and we're going to get into it. Glass half empty, some concerns, critiques. Jason, I want to throw it over to you. What was the most concerning to you? Was it the inconsistent offense in the red zone, the lack of pressure generated, something else?
No, for me, it's gonna be the defense, just kind of as a whole. Like, the most obvious football thing ever is like, this defense really needs to play with a lead and with that offense behind the sticks, because I think when our D line has to play, two-way football where they're playing run and pass, they're just they got beat up. They got beat up pretty bad. I think if they can pin their ears back, they might be have a little bit more success, but they still didn't. I would say the defense was a big concern because I don't know that anybody in the. I think we saw Ryan. You might have shared a tweet that Western Michigan finished last season like in the 120s in total offense, and I mean they kind of had their way with Wisconsin.
I think that was their overall rank, but yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean the defense is a concern because we got a lot of bigger and better horses coming through this year than Western Michigan.
Teams have shown that they can run on a Mike Tressel defense. I mean, and when you lose, we're not acting like James Thompson Jr. was some first, second team all Big Ten caliber player because that's not accurate. But I think it speaks to how little high-end talent remains in this room, at least at present. Doesn't mean there aren't guys in there that couldn't develop into something, but without him, yeah, the amount of talent in there is concerning. And yes, Western Michigan has a veteran offensive line, but I don't care, quite frankly, if you can't get a push, and kind of have your way, in a close game. I think Wisconsin's going to find themselves in a lot of close games for better or worse. And this was not particularly encouraging. I thought the defensive line was a real problem.
Here's a question that I asked myself this weekend. Defense goes poorly again, lasts for the whole year. How much money do we offer Jim Leonard to come back?
Is that a rhetorical question or a real question?
Yeah, yes. Rhetorical.
Yes is my answer.
And obviously that's way out of line right now. But
see
I was so angry.
See if Potosi can help, throw us a bone. See if we can lure him back out of Denver. I think there's legitimate reason to have pause with what we've seen so far, and you don't want to make too much of 1 week because I think they had their back against the wall a good amount of times, and and they held up. Like that's worth acknowledging. They had their moments.
I know that's what we're getting, but
right. I think that's it. Is we know that's going to be the reality, and I'm not real confident that what I saw is the most glaring weakness. This was the opportunity for them to disrupt, and I didn't see a lot of it. I mean, quite frankly, I think Elijah Hills had the only tackle for loss on his sack, and that came pretty late in the game.
Well, and like a guy, we talked about it last week, I was stoked about, and I guess I didn't even look at a bunch of the grades this weekend, but like Pius, like I felt like I didn't hear his name called all game, and just didn't even. I felt like he didn't exist on the field.
He was getting double teamed a lot, and that would get to my point.
But it was just like I said, there's one guy we were excited about that's like didn't really make an impact, and then like Lowry made a couple nice plays, but there was a few times he was just lost out there, and the D line is just very concerning. Everything else wasn't bad on defense. I don't.
They only
think.
Generated 11 pressures the entire game.
Yeah, that's terrifying, and I think that kind of gets to my point is when you say what concerns you most. I don't know if I'm more concerned, and I'm not going to go too negative because I am a super positive person. However, I don't know what is more. Don't laugh, Jay. I don't know what is more concerning to me between the trenches and the coaching staff, and like I know that sounds like wow, questioning the coach. I think when I look at the trenches,
March got him fucking mad, dude.
Nope, not now. You talk about that. We're letting that one slide. That's for another day. No, I think when I look at the trenches, and I had posted something on Twitter, and like I had every stooge. It's like, well, that was just one play, but it's like when Western Michigan got the touchdown, it's like we were getting pushed back. Like as the resident 6th grade trenches coordinator for offense and defensive line, I can tell you like that's where I watch a lot of the game because that's where it's won and lost, and that's what I tell my boys every single practice. What we do is going to affect the game. So I watch the trenches probably more than the average fan just because like I'm intrigued by it. I like that it's a fist fight every play. I was concerned on what little push we got. Now, could that be because they had 9 or 10 in the box? And that kind of gets to my point of why when Western, I guess is a rhetorical question also. When Western Michigan was running a 12 personnel, why were you in a 2-4-5 for so long? And then on the opposite, when you were on offense, why did you keep running into 9 and 10 man boxes? Like, didn't we like destroy Paul Chris for doing the same thing? And it's like, if we're just going to keep it 100, why can't we? You know what I mean? It just seems like, oh, that was the game plan. It was to go horizontal. It's not to take shots. But why was that the game plan? Is Alabama going to play us differently because they didn't see a couple go balls? Like, oh no, they don't throw it deep, and then we throw it deep. Now, oh, they know the forward pass. Like, you're not fooling anybody, dude. Just throw the ball down the field. I don't even care if it's incomplete. I don't care if you throw it into the third row of the stands and hit a child. Just throw the ball more than 15 yards, please. And I don't know if it's what's more concerning, the offensive and defensive lines getting no push, or was it they weren't getting enough push because they're going against 9 or 10 man boxes, or they're in a 2-4-5 getting double teamed at the point of attack, to the point where you're making, Coop, is Pius is just basically getting washed out because he's literally going against a left tackle and a tight end, and he's a somewhat undersized guy from FCS, great player that he is. No one's going to be successful when they're going against double teams and all night.
Well, and like, you know, to kind of revert back to the offense, like you're talking about, you know, the need to generate some explosive plays. Like we had now 14 games of worth of sample size to show that we haven't figured out how to do that yet. And it's,
well, it's like we don't even try.
It's part of why, and you know, I want to make it clear that obviously this is still kind of a developing opinion, but I was the low man on the receiving core of the four of us. And it's not, I think that, I think that Will Pauling is great. I think that Tretch, you know, was phenomenal. He didn't play nearly enough. I mean, but right therein lies a problem too. They play the same spot. Yeah. So how do you figure that out? And they will, they're going to have to.
Yeah. Coach your team, dude. Yeah.
But not all, but like many teams are going to have dynamic slot weapons. I'm not diminishing their talent because I think that they're huge pieces of this offense. You know, I think Bryson Green is fine on the outside, but after that, you know, you don't dip into the spring transfer portal for a receiver because you're happy with what you have. You know, I think between Vinny Anthony, Quincy Burrows, Chris Brooks, you know, even Tyrell Henry, like these guys, I don't think there's enough there to generate enough. Like, I don't think these guys are getting open enough. Like, I don't know. I question whether or not this passing attack has the ability to be dynamic. Because I think they lack the horses.
I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. I thought Bryson Green played well. Like, I thought the main three receivers, Pauline Green, or I shouldn't say main three, I guess, but I thought Pauline Green and Tretch all played well. I get what you're saying about guys not being able to get open, but like, what's to say we don't play Pauline or Tretch on the outside a little more? They can get open. We saw that with Tretch. Like, or you run more motions, you get a little maybe fancier with the offensive formations. Like, there's ways to go about this. And
these guys have been on the roster for 2 years. So
yeah,
what is it like? What at this point, like, you got to have some sets and some formations and plays for that.
I think we saw enough from the tight ends week one. If you want to talk about a positive, I guess, that I didn't mention, I really liked what the tight end room did week one. I think if we can get them a little more involved, this could open up the receiving game.
I think that's a big piece, and not because I think either of these guys is going to catch 20, 30 balls, nothing like that. I don't think they're going to be dynamic pass catchers. But we saw last year when Cundiff and Eschenbach, you know, basically the day before camp, were just like, hey, we're not coming out, you know, and then we had to roll with, you know, Nowakowski, who was just converting to tight end, and Ashcraft, who's a true freshman. You know, they weren't particularly confident in their ability to execute. And then we saw this week, Wisconsin, you know, over half of their snaps in 11 personnel. And it's not because they, you know, those two guys in particular are going to be huge, you know, pass catchers, but they trusted them and they believed in them enough that they could go out and, you know, execute this game plan. They wanted to run the football. And Tucker Ashcraft was not known for his blocking a year ago. And I thought that he did some nice things. So to me, it shows that we have right now, or at least the staff trusts two guys to give them that option.
But I have a question about your pass catchers, since that's kind of the theme right now. Why are we struggling to pass the ball? Because if you guys want to play a riveting game called Guess That Wide Receiver, I have a stat line for you. So this team played against a Big Ten team this weekend, and this player had 5 receptions for 141 yards with an average of 28.2 yards, and he had 5 catches on 5 targets. Name that player. I'll give you a hint. He was ridiculed for a drop against Buffalo last year and was always kind of the butt of jokes.
Skylar Bell?
Yes. 141 yards against Maryland. They lost 50-7, but he had 141 yards. But mind you,
Nick, don't let details get in the way.
Don't let the details get in the way, right?
No, but Nick Evers was 6 for 17 for 73 yards and a pick. So he caught all those yards with a backup. So did he have talent?
Or he played against backups?
Them open? Maybe, but I would kill for one of our receivers to have 141 yards against a Western Michigan.
Yeah, I would too, and that's why I was bitching about us not throwing the ball down the field, and that's why I think we should play Tretch. Like Tretch needs to play more.
But is that a player issue or a coaching? Like, so when we get back to but that gets back to my biggest concerns. I don't know if I'm more concerned about the trenches and how bad they are, or not how bad they are, how unmovable Western Michigan seemed to be, or is our scheme, the air raid, is it opening what it's supposed to? When Skylar Bell, backups are not. So I would imagine Maryland backups are equivalent to Western Michigan starters, probably ipso facto. If you're still getting 141 yards and leading your team with another player from Purdue, TJ Sheffield, decent wide receiver, doubling his catches, 5x his yards, like, I mean, he's a pretty decent wide receiver. Should we have kept him? Probably not. Blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, like, why couldn't he be successful here? Why are we having trouble with Bryson Green being successful or CJ Williams being successful when all these guys had high pedigree? I mean, CJ didn't have a lot, but not pedigree. He didn't have a lot of like film coming here, but it's also like we keep being like and this is not just this podcast, but I've heard other people be down on the wide receiver core, but it's like, why are we? Is it all on them? Because we were down on them last year too, and it seems like when guys leave, they're not too bad.
I don't know. They haven't. I mean, obviously, Will Pauling was a hit, right? Like you brought him in. He had like 5th most receptions in a single season program history. But beyond that, they haven't done it. They haven't proved it to me. Like you see it on a practice field, and that's one thing. But we haven't seen them be anything more than just a net neutral on offense. And until I see more than that, I can't give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't. It's going to get to a bigger point that I make later, but I don't really believe in this offense.
It doesn't help that these guys have played with a different quarterback every single season of their career, basically.
Yeah, but that's the transfer portal arrow, brother. Like it's going to be like that. No matter.
Yeah, but it's also you want to talk about coaching, recruit. Like, is that a coaching thing? Why can't we get a recruiting thing? Why can't we get a sophomore transfer who could start 3 years?
Well, we have, but
I'm just playing. I'm just like, not that I'm saying it should happen, but like these are all angles you could take if you want to.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, when I look at the future schedule and I look at the Badgers currently have 4 within the top 13 teams in the AP poll, 5 within the top 22 if you include Iowa, which you never know what they're going to be other than nasty on defense. Where exactly, other than Western Michigan, are these guys going to, get reps? Because, like, I'm not, like, unless you, like we had talked about at the very beginning, like, what do we need to see against South Dakota? Like, I need to see guys running open, because if not, this last 10-game stretch, it's going to take a toll on your boy.
Jay, I'm gonna pivot here, but you're the most level-headed person on this podcast when it comes to, like you said, you're Mr. Aaron Rodgers, you're RELAX. I'm gonna give I don't even know if it qualifies as a hot take, because I've been sitting on this for a while, but I'm gonna say it out loud tonight, and I want you to tell me whether or not I'm overreacting. So here's kind of my where I'm at right now with Luke Fickell, with the program, with everything. I believe in Luke Fickell as a CEO, a program builder, a recruiter. I think the guy gets it. I believe in him. I do not believe in Phil Longo one bit. I'm 50-50 at best on Mike Tressel. I think it's going to be a tough year, probably a fine one, maybe something similar to last year, even though we have better talent. But I feel like I now have a large enough sample size to say that we do not have the coaching advantage at either coordinator spot, almost regardless of opponent. Am I overreacting?
Kind of yes, kind of no. Because I right now, I don't know that 14 games or however many, it's 15 games. I don't think that it's enough for me to make like a concrete argument that you need to move away from those guys. But I do think by the end of this season, like if you're going to make a change, you need to make a change now, because there's just no point in having another year. And then if you have another shitty year, then you got to make the choice then. I had a feeling that was where you were going. I just feel like with Tressel and Fickell's history that he is maybe more safe than Longo necessarily is.
I definitely think that's true.
I think that we've already seen in the 14 games that I don't know that Longo and Fickell see the same thing on the offensive side of the ball. And I think that Longo is kind of maybe pressing, and it's not working right now. But I'm not ready to put Longo completely on the hot seat, personally.
I'll be honest. I think that most of that is stuff that I probably needed to hear. I mean, you're right. Like where I'm, projecting 14 games as a large sample size. Perhaps it isn't. And I agree that I would not, and by any means, be trying to make a move now. But, at least at Wisconsin, I've not yet seen anything from Phil Longo to suggest that he was the right man for the hire. Like I'm willing to be, I'm open-minded on Mike Tressel, but I'm still pretty split because, we were spoiled all those years with, really everyone since Dave Aranda, stopping the run was just a given. And it's been kind of frustrating watching people run the football down our throat at will.
That's fair. I think it's fair.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked Jay, because I would not give you that same feedback. I agree with everything you said, and I just did a quick mental count here. And Phil Longo, since taking this job, has had in the age where if you're a good enough quarterback, you can start as a true freshman. I'm counting Mabry in this, and Milos, which he's not going to touch the field, but he's had access, including Mertz and Burkett and Wolf. Sorry, I think we're at 10 now. He had access to 10 guys to choose from. Now, I'm not saying those are the best options, but Mertz and Wolf and Burkett and Mabry and Tanner Mordecai and Braden Locke and Nick Evers and Tyler Van Dyke, and we're still struggling to throw the ball. So I'm 100% there. Now, are any of those guys Drake May? Not a chance. However, if you can't get 10 guys to push the ball down the field at some level, like, what are we doing here, bud? And I get that it takes a while, and 14 games is probably not the number that we need to make that decision. And I'm not calling for his job either, but I'll just leave you with this before you go to Coop, because I know I could get long-winded. 2 weeks before Paul Chryst was fired, and let me preface, I am not saying Paul Chryst over Luke Fickell. I still believe in him and all the things you said. I think he's a builder of teams. I get it. But 2 weeks before Paul Chryst was fired, he won a game 66-7. The week after he was fired, Jim Leonard and Bobby Ingram, who had never called plays before. Now, I understand it's an established system, but Bobby Ingram, Graham Mertz, and Braylon Allen, who actually threw a touchdown, set a school record with 6 touchdown passes against Northwestern. A similar Northwestern team that we scored 3 points on the following year. So I'm not ipso facto in it, but why can we score 67 or 66 on a bomb, throw for 6 touchdown passes against Northwestern, and then the next year struggle with Western Michigan and only score 3? Math ain't mathin', Jack.
I'm with you, man. I'm hurt. I'm making probably more of week one than I ought to. And I hope we
I don't
sit
think
back
so.
here this time next week and, my all I want to see is us have a little bit of fun on Saturday, cruise to a dub, enjoy what we're watching. That's all I need. Maybe things will even back out a little bit, but Coop, I want to throw it over to you. I know you got a little geography that you want to, throw the listeners away before we get out of here.
I do. And as far as if that's a hot take or not, Dylan, no, both coordinators to me are on the hot seat if this does not go well.
To clarify before geography, if it doesn't go well this week or this season?
Season.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we're at that point.
No, I didn't think so. But when it was positivity time, it was a little absent. So I was just making sure we're not calling for jobs on Sunday.
All right. So our geography question today. Oh shit! One sec. Takes us to the Middle East, fellas. We are in, and I'm sure I'm going to say this bad, not correct. Abbottabad, Pakistan. And a fun fact about that, there's a KFC in Abbottabad, Pakistan that is 5.1 kilometers from where we assassinated Osama bin Laden. So I just like to imagine that the boys went in there, took care of business, and then went and got a 10-piece extra crispy at KFC 5.1 kilometers away.
Yeah, that just would scream patriotism.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, folks.
That's our geography fun fact of the week.
I think that's going to do it for us here today. And as always, thanks for being here and making Talkin Badgers part of your week. If you're able, share the show with a friend, tell a friend. Let's keep building this community together. We'll be back soon. We'll dive deep into the South Dakota game after that. Until then, we'll catch you next episode and keep your heads up, Badger Nation. Hopefully better days are on the horizon.